they will be recorded. You can listen and watch them later on. And we will have the first remote speaker, Andreas Schmitz from Roche. He will talk about becoming a worldwide network organization. And just earlier, we've spoken many times about silos and about networks. So I think this is absolutely hitting the nail on the head. So welcome, Andreas. The floor is yours. I think you have to repeat again because you're mute.
Double mute. Should have figured that out after 2 years lockdown. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I was just saying that was really insightful already. My wife used to work for the Daiichi Sankyo, so getting those insights was quite impressive now. Thank you. And well, now it's becoming a worldwide network organization, and how we were approaching this from a people and culture perspective. So I would like to bring you on the journey that we were embarking on, and actually that started quite some years ago. But let me start with quickly, at least, introducing what and who is Roche. I think by now a lot more people know what Roche is about. It's not about some sweets, and it's not about cream for hands or anything. We are a leader in diagnostics, and we are a leader on the pharmaceutical sides. And ideally, we can combine those two strengths in identifying exactly what kind of disease you have and find the right treatment in an individualized way. That's at least our vision. By now, we're more than 100,000 people worldwide. We have about 58 billion in revenue in Swiss francs, and we invest quite a lot in innovation, as we just heard. That's the core also of our business. It's newly innovative pharmaceuticals and value-added diagnostics. So 12 billion of those 58 go back into the R&D investment, which is quite high even in terms of the overall number. That's 20 million a day. Maybe let's have a view on Germany, and you can see that we are about 17,000 employees here. So it's quite a big footprint that Roche has in Germany, and we have the full value chain here. We have the R&D functions in both divisions here. We have manufacturing, we have, of course, the commercial units, everything you need to run a full company. Of course, we are highly interlinked with the headquarters and with other locations as well. And you can see here our biggest locations being in Mannheim, Penzberg, which is south of Munich, Grenzach-Rühlen, that is right across the border from a Basel perspective, where our headquarters is, and then some smaller sites in Ludwigsburg and Potsdam. And some demographics below, just for on the side, you can see how we are working, what the average age is, but all of that doesn't really matter when we come to why are we actually changing? What was the reason why we think that working in a worldwide network is necessary or is the next step that we would like to take? So let's start with that why, having that in mind. And I would like to reflect on two perspectives. One is the external world, and I know VUCA is probably nothing new to you, but how does it translate in our industry? How does it translate in terms of Roche? And after that, let's have a look on the internal demand of the internal drivers that led us to believe we need to change our working model or operating model, how we work in people and culture going forward. VUCA world, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. What does it really mean? Well, for us, it meant that there is a high unmet demand of medical needs. And we see that already now. There's so many diseases out there where there is no treatment. And depending on where you are, there will be no treatment for quite some long time. And still, it's our approach. We would like to get in those fields. On the other hand, there's this significant technical progress that the speed of progress in the field of bioscience is amazing. However, that puts some pressure on us as well. As a startup company in those fields comes up every day with great ideas, and ideally we can collaborate with them or work together to find some new solutions here. And again, omnipresence of data and analytics that helps us on the one hand. It can make us better. It can be used for further development, but it also makes it much more complex how to engage and how to access the right kind of data, and how do you use it in the best way. Overwhelming complexity of supply. is another force that made it quite interesting how we're going forward to work. The budgets in the healthcare sectors, well, right now in Corona times, not only in Germany, but probably every country is a little bit struggling. How do we keep the healthcare budgets of society on track? So there's pressure, of course, on every company that produces diagnostics and also on the pharmaceuticals. And the competitive landscape. And I said it before, there's a lot of money on the market right now. And that means that small companies can scale up quite fast, and they do so. So it puts some pressure on us as a company. So we saw that not only in HR, but as a business, as an overall corporation, there is a need to change, to work differently, to approach these kind of challenges. But we didn't want to just follow something. However, we saw that there is a mechanism already in place. That's also nothing new. Probably you've seen, lots of you have seen that as well. How do we move on from a more machine-like organization to the more organism-like organization, which is one approach to face the VUCA world. And we know that the machine-like organizations, that's not bad. That's not a bad thing. It's highly efficient, addressing a need that is more stable as it maybe used to be. You have a little bit more bureaucracy, but you have a quite good structure and you can plan accordingly. But if you cannot plan anymore that on a long-term basis, you need to refine the way you work. And that's where the organism comes into place, where you put together teams at the time with the skills you need for the specific problem or challenge you have. And that puts quite some interesting facts into the room. One being that comes up every day at Roche, at least, it's what's actually the role of a leader in such an organization. And I'll come back to that a little bit later. I leave this here for now. We might come back to that later as well, but I really would like to emphasize this was in our head as well when we embarked on the journey we are on the P&C, on the people and culture side right now. We didn't want to let us only be driven by the external factors, and that's why there's some internal forces happening as well. And we just heard that at Daiichi, you have a 5-year planning horizon. We in the past did the same, and now we moved to something different. We're trying out the 10-year ambitions. And why are we doing so? Why do we think that that's something that helps us to become successful? Well, ideally, when you look ahead 10 years, you put some distance between the here and now, and you hopefully think bigger, as big as you can. However, that forces you to completely rethink the way you work right now. And as you can see here, some of the, some people call it big, hairy, audacious goals, what we would like to deliver twice as many medical advances at half the cost of society, which you saw at the beginning as well. There's a cost pressure on society and there's a medical need out there. So we're addressing this ideally by these kind of ambitions. It's not really goals, it's an ambition, which is more vague and which shows you a direction where we would like to go. The same for diagnostics insights. So we have put up some North Stars, which we think are the right way to go. And when you look at these, deliver twice as many medical advances or double the patient access to novel high medical value diagnostic solutions. What does that mean? Well, we know that not everybody in the world has access to the tests and to the diagnostics that are needed to do the right treatment. Corona just being one example where we saw there's some good tests out there, and then there's some not so good tests out there, and there's a price difference, of course. And we know that in some areas of the world, access to more pricey tests are not there. So we will need to work on that as well. And therefore, we need to rethink how we work right now. And that can only happen on a long-term horizon. If we look at where we are right now, what our cost basis is, and then try to fix it in a day or in a year or in 2 years, you won't get there by step changes. You will only go there by a hyperbolic curve, and that requires a different kind of thinking. And when we saw that from a people and culture perspective, we thought, That's not only relevant to the business units out there. Well, that's also true for the business unit called People and Culture. And it's about how can we leverage the knowledge, the capabilities, the skills we have around the world. And it says here, we have 20 transformations right now going on in Germany. As you saw, we reflect kind of Roche overall, but in a smaller scale. So how does the function, people, and culture support 20 transformations, and that not just being a reorganization? It's really the structure, the skills, the mindset, all of that is being changed in those business units. And we have limited resources, as everybody. We have quite good, stable resources, but it's still limited. And in the past, what we did is we just added more people. We hired more people and said, well, it's needed. So as a big country with all of those things going on, let's just hire some more people. So we build up resources as a big country, and right next to us, maybe in let's Netherlands or Denmark or whatever country you choose, which does not have such a big Roche presence at least, well, they couldn't afford bringing in an expert for every topic. That didn't scale. So how do we use the knowledge and capabilities that is within the organization, but make it accessible to everybody? That was the goal we were trying to achieve right now. And that led us to the network approach, and that didn't come right in the next day. And what you see here is our chapter model, but it doesn't really matter that much what chapters there are, how you call them, and what is really in it. Integrated workforce strategies, for instance, you probably will not know what is in there. What is in there is the talent acquisition group, for instance, but it's also people relations, labor relations. There's some grouping that happen within to ideally bring together similar skill sets that you can then work together for. But the key is here, which is in German, interesting enough, I'm sorry for that, which is the integrated network. So how do we now deliver those skills and capabilities to where it is needed? And that only goes with technology. Not only, but it plays a big part. And this is a much simplified version of what our working model is like. So in the ideal world, there's two ways. And this is the more reactive side. I'll tell you a little bit about the proactive side in a minute. The reactive side means our major tool is what we call the people portal. So it's online. And why is that? So at least in our experience, what happened that if you are a team lead, you know who your business partner is. Ideally, you know who your contact person in people and culture is. So you try to call that person. Usually you didn't get an answer because one business partner supports about 50 to 80 leaders in his or her client group. So therefore you send an email saying, hey, please call me back. I need this and that. So that got to the business partner in the past and then was trying to figure out what to do next. And we were trying now with this approach to do a shortcut. Shortcut meaning don't bother about finding who's your business partner right now. If there were changes in the organization, maybe you don't even know who it is right now. And maybe the business partner who was assigned to you at some point in time is not even the one with the best skills or with the capabilities you need for your specific problem right now or challenge. And therefore we said people portal, that is, meaning you open up a case in the people portal. Well, now you say, people topics, case management, does that really work? Well, nothing else happened before. You send an email. But the beauty of the people portal is really that it finds and identifies who is the best contact person. And not only the business partner, but it identifies, okay, we see some keywords in there. So it's not only about the business partner expertise. We will need a people and organizational growth, which is people development and organizational development expert there. And for this topic, this case, Adams put in the system, well, we do not only need business partner and a consulting partner of people and organizational growth, we will also need somebody who does the hiring because it might be a reorganization or whatever it might be. And those people all get then the request of, hey, please come together. Team lead Adam has posted something that he needs help can you please reach out to him in this case and make sure that his challenge is being addressed. So Adam doesn't need to find people. The business partner doesn't need to find people. Ideally, the system finds it. Now, does it work 100%? Not yet, because it's about tagging, it's about the right connections, it's a little bit about the intelligence of the system, but it is getting much closer and much easier once it is set up in the best way. And the system is learning while we are learning how to best tag people with the right expertise. Did that happen overnight? No. It's not finished yet on the one hand. And you can say it started quite some time ago. In this case, we started here in 2015 with a major change that meant harmonizing the big people processes, or what we call people practices. So how do we go along with performance management, year-end processes, check-ins? All of that came together when we reviewed our landscape of people practices in 2015, which is still a basis to work as we do right now. Actually, we found out we're still a lot more fragmented than we originally thought. So the process harmonization is still a key ingredient to make this model work, because otherwise it becomes very difficult for somebody in France to then work for a leader in Germany and deliver some solution here. Also key is digitalization. And in this case, we chose Workday. We switched from another vendor, actually my former employer, to Workday, to also, again, make sure that system access is given to everybody who needs it. That we see, again, standardized processes, but also have the leaders being empowered to also do what they can do on their own. And that doesn't mean give them more work, but sometimes the self-services are much easier and faster than trying to contact somebody. It then took a little bit of time in between, because we tried the co-creation way of designing our operating model. That meant more than 100 people and culture colleagues were brought into the design process. So how do we now, with these basics, people practices and people and culture HR system in place, we know that transformations are ongoing, that the working world is changing, VUCA is coming. So what needs to happen now? How do we best leverage our resources? And that led us to these sprints and sprint designs and the co-creation model, and overall, quite some intense work for all of us that designed the model as it is right now, which is let's call it a 90% version. We just went live in August or launched the new model. And now we see, of course, what is working already. And we also see what's not working and what we might need to change. But overall, the model itself with the network is quite impressive. Occasionally, lots of times it starts to work right now, and you can really see a difference if you bring in the best people needed for the specific challenge ahead of you. Did that go along with the structural change? Yes, it did. We had quite some, as I said before, in the past, we tried to solve problems with bringing in more people, and that blew up our headcount also in people and culture quite a bit. So we consolidated that, and based on the new model, based on what we saw, based on a work assessment, we thought we can reduce the number of positions a bit to also deliver some financial flexibility. Looking how good we are on time. We have, okay, there's still some time, good. Because I would like to, there's some more things in place which is needed to make such a transformation, because you can change things quite easily in terms of what's the structure and what is a chapter called and how do you pool these things and what's the process, and even system-wise that you can put in quite easily compared to the cultural aspects you will need to change and that we are still working on right now. And one is autonomy of decision-making. In such a model, you cannot centrally manage anymore. You need to have empowered people and culture colleagues to take the ownership and solving and designing solutions. And that ideally it doesn't go randomly, so it still follows some logic, and that's where we put in decision principles. These are not rules, but it's a way of how do we know that we are kind of on track. If we are if we need to decide right or left, using those decision principles helps us to decide what is the route to go. Sounds difficult, it really is. So we are still working on those decision principles, how to make them most meaningful for people as they have to work across an organization of, in this case, more than 2,000 people and culture colleagues around the world. Technology I mentioned, capability building, not only from a digital proficiency perspective, but also from what kind of capabilities do you need in such an environment of a worldwide integrated network? The roles, to some extent, have changed or are changing. The role of a people and culture business partner is changing, as it doesn't include the full value chain anymore of people and culture topics. It reflects more the strategic component, where we are sometimes not maybe on par with what is needed there. So you need to have a capability building mode in place. And last but not least is the mindset. It's an existing habit. So of course, I do it myself. Ideally, if I need something, I call up who used to be my people and culture business partner. And she then nicely says, well, Andreas, I could help you right now. If it's super, super urgent, let me know. But otherwise, please go the way you tell everybody else to go, because I might not be the right and the best person to help you right now. And yeah, that is, initially it's like, what's going on? But overall, it completely makes sense, because when I did this, somebody else contacted me, in this case from our location in Budapest, and could help me right away, because it was a system topic and I had some challenges here, and my colleague here wouldn't have known how to do it. I said it already, it's a journey, and we have just started on it. And I think it's super important to keep that learning perspective in place. And one of my favorite quotes is the pivot without remorse. Sometimes you have to change the course. Sometimes you have to course correct when you're seeing something is not working. That doesn't mean the full model is not working, but there's small things that we estimated differently, or we thought it runs differently. That's why we're trying and experimenting. But then you also have to have the courage to say, if it's not working, let's look for a different solution. And other challenges, I said it before, the role of a leader. What is actually then the role of a leader? It's not the expert leader anymore. The role of the leader is changing in such a model of more of the coach, of the people advocate maybe, or the catalyst to bring up new ideas and make them faster or stronger, or take out barriers. It's not so much anymore about the decision making. The decision making shouldn't happen on a leadership level anymore. Yes, from a very high level leadership strategic perspective, but not on a day-to-day level, not on a day-to-day basis. The model is nice and fine, and you can see on the right side, there's still local processes happening. We still have a works council in Germany, which we need to work with, that is not reflected in a US process or in a Japanese process or wherever. So of course, it needs to be adaptable to reflect the local needs. And that's the constant struggle I think we have. We would like to harmonize as much as possible, but we still have to keep some identity, as there's some legal requirements going on as well. And maybe what that means for me personally, and that's probably the last story I'm going to tell. Well, as Arbeitsdirektor, I'm not sure if labor director is the right translation here, that is quite a traditional role, right? It is being defined. It is clear what is in scope, pretty much at least. And now it's about head of people and culture and catalyst for Germany. That's my internal title, so to say, the catalyst. And that means quite some different things. That means I hardly have any direct report anymore. I'm not leading directly a payroll team to a compensation team and all what do you have in between. Yet I still do lead and I'm still responsible for overall people and culture in Germany. So how do I do this? And I think it's highly important coming back to those principles. If you have the principles, you can have, this is the picture here, the flock of birds. How do they manage to fly in the way they do? And why are they doing this? Well, they do this to not be eaten, right? That if a predator comes in between them, that they have this maneuvering and can go out of the way. So don't be eaten is their one principle, and don't collide with your neighbor is another one. these are quite easy principles, and that helps this flock of birds to maneuver. And that's now also my task. How do I come up with the principles that the organization still maneuvers in the same direction, even though it's highly flexible? That's a mechanism. And the second one is giving purpose. So how does everybody contribute to the mission ahead, making clear what our overall mission is? We have quite a strong purpose statement, but translating it to everybody's daily work, also in people and culture, gives another direction. So you can see it's quite different than what a role of a regular labor director might be. And is it fully fleshed out yet? No, it's not. And that's again the learning for me, which I'm having right now, how to best maneuver in such an environment. Some things are working, others are not. And that's where we are right now, 3 months in after launch of this worldwide network. You can see the connections already. The communication across countries is much stronger than before, and bringing in expertise from somewhere in the world for a specific challenge, especially in Corona times where you work from home anyway, has become much easier, but still a long way to go. And with that, I would like to close it and see if there are any questions, if we have time.
Thank you, Andreas, very much for this presentation. Thank you very much for this presentation, Andreas. The floor is yours. If there are any questions for Andreas Schmitz right now. No. I like the fact how humble you are when things don't work according to plan. So I think this is a key takeaway, and also how you integrate artificial intelligence into your network. So thank you very much.